Sounds reasonable. Okay. So I'll pull my chair right quick now because we are not cooking. And we can have a brief discussion here instead of the usual class. And we can have a brief discussion and have a full class next time. Yesterday, okay, so let me first introduce the class for the guests that we have today. The class that I'm offering online is health and wellness through food literacy. And it's based on a thesis I've been working on for the last about 30 years or so. And I say 30 years because I started eating organic food on February the 28th, 1991. That was 2 years after the second year I've been here in the US. And I can even be ambitious and say that that's the date that I used to mark. But my journey with food literacy started as soon as I landed in the US. When I tasted food, American food, immediately I came into a very, very great awareness about the contradictions that was very obvious to me about how America called first world nation, country that I was looking up to with very, very high regards. And that's the reason why I want to come and study here for my college. But yet, when I tasted the food, So as soon as I got here and tasted the food, it changed the trajectory of my visit, my sojourn in the US. Because instead of studying business as I had intended to, and going back to Kenya and working in business and probably working with my dad for a while and also continuing the family business, I shifted now to study political science and philosophy and medical anthropology, urban anthropology, and then went to culinary school. So all this time, and after I finished grad school, I did my own 4-year as a person of African descent. And it was a rabbit hole. The more I read, the more I found out, and the more I was flabbergasted by some of the information that I found out. So that's the basis of this class. And I have come to the conclusion, at least in one of the theses, that we, regardless of what educational level we might have, however much money we are making, where we live, we all belong to one religion, quote unquote, whether we recognize it or not. And that religion I call the death worship, because a lot of the things that we are doing in one way or the other is causing death, or it symbolizes the worship of death, because the ultimate result of majority of our actions leads to premature death. It's not what I call life worship. The major focus of our energy is not utilized to promote life, but to promote death in one fashion or another, in the most obvious ways, but particularly in the way we consume food. Because there is no creature that can consume the wrong food and expect to live a long time, or to continue to prosper and thrive. And the idea of prospering and thriving is innate in all creatures. All creatures go to great lengths in order to ensure it's the survival of the species. That's the science. I don't think we need to have a debate about that. And if anything, I'm ever amazed by some of the contraptions, by different species that they come up with, what we call culture, that different species, different plants come up with in order to survive. And I give examples of those from time to time. Some of the ones that I find to be really, really fascinating. And the idea of survival makes people do, and different species do, some of the most amazing things, like I say. Maybe I can give a couple of examples. In the book, The Origin of Species, which was written in 1854 by Charles Darwin, I still remember from the first time I read it back, I think that was been to be 1994, the story of this kind of termite ant, a kind of ant that lives in the Amazon, called Famosa sanguinea. Famosa sanguinea is a type of ant that crawls on the base of the Amazon forest, and it doesn't do any work. The only work the ants, the male ants, do is from time to time they'll leave their colony and they'll just scour around looking for another much smaller species of ant. And whenever they find the colony, they'll engage in a big fight, and they'll fight, vicious fight, and kill all the adults, male and female, and only carry the children with them. And they'll hurt the kids, the children, the baby ants, and they'll herd them to their own colony. They'll train these captured baby ants of this species to be their slaves. And these new species of ant is trained to be slaves and become literally slaves. They don't do anything. Even when the Famosa sanguinea females have their own babies, the babies have to be taken care of by the slave ants. And the problem was so serious that the Famosa sanguinea females were isolated by a researcher and put together with their children just by themselves, and their babies died. Children, but babies, their babies died because their baby ants died because the female Famosa sanguinea ants did not know how to take care of their ants or their own babies. They'll rely on their help of the slave ants. And so that's the one thing. The other thing is that I found very fascinating in this particular instance is that these very enslaved ants also work to protect the Famosa sanguinea colony. So if another type of ant try to attack the Famosa sanguinea colony, the enslaved ants will go to war and they'll fight to death in order to protect their masters. That's just how serious it is. So let's look at the length to which that one species of ant goes in order to ensure that its species thrives and prospers and increases its survival rate of survival. So one. Then the last one I want to use is a type of ant, termite, that actually, where the female actually hatches the eggs in the stomach of the female. And the male termites will impregnate their sisters. And then the females will grow some, and then the males would eat their mother. And their mother will die, and the females would survive, but they'll survive when they're already pregnant. So when they themselves grow up to maturity, they already have fertile eggs in them. And the same cycle will be repeated, where The eggs will hatch. Once they hatch, they'll have males and females inside. And then the males will impregnate the sisters and eat the mother, and the cycle. So, man, life is very fascinating. So, saying that to say that when I think about the situation of people, especially of people of African descent, first, but also as a foundation, but then look outwards and look at the relationship between humans and the planet, then that idea of, or that thesis of death worship seems to make a lot of sense. And it seems to make a lot of sense because I've come to the conclusion that there are two different kinds of food system. There are food system all over, but we can divide our food in general the same way we divide time or a calendar. A calendar is very, very specific to a particular group of people. I say the Chinese have their own calendar. The Ethiopians have their own calendar. The Egyptians have their own calendar. So part of being free for any group of people is to create their own calendar. Because if you're using other people's calendar, it's no different from being enslaved, because you're doing things according to how other people find it logical for to work. Doesn't mean you can borrow somebody else's calendar, but I'm talking about very specifically and very historically, based on the fact that when empires begin and start to expand, one of the things that they take to the places they conquer is their own calendar. Same thing with religion and other things and political systems of government. All those things are instruments that are used by those people who intend to conquer other people, just like the Formosa Singonea intended to conquer other species of ants for its own benefit. The empire, which actually comes from the word vampire, is the same concept, whereby one country or one community or one group of people or one race comes up with a strategy to ensure that they are going to benefit from the work of others to optimize the survival rate of their own either race or country or species or what have you. Okay, so I'm saying that to say that I've come to to view food through my own indigenous calendar, or to understand, and so on, with or understand that there are different ways of dividing time, right? So I've looked at the food system and divided along two ways. There is one that is more indigenous system of way of looking at food. Okay, all right, good day. We're wrapping up in a few here. And one indigenous way and one more modern way, which I call empiristic or fiat. The indigenous people primarily look at food, have a food system that moves from food descendancy to food ascendancy. In other words, you're moving from a point of high level of food literacy or food experience to places of poor or low food literacy. That's one. So I call from descendancy to ascendancy. Then you have a system where you have food moving from, or a culture where the food culture moves from a level of food ascendancy to a food descendancy. So food descendancy to ascendancy, food descendancy to ascendancy. Okay, I'll say it again. Food descendancy to food ascendancy. Food ascendancy to food descendancy. And the modern way country we live in, and the globe, there is a huge proliferation of food illiteracy, where people do not recognize that the food is the most political thing that you ever touch in your life. So if you don't have control over your food, then and other people are controlling your food. And those people happen to have very negative views about you. then you find yourself advancing those negative impacts on yourself through the way in which you consume food. And that's why I've come to the conclusion that the way in which we consume food is a form of death worship, because we're consuming food that is leading to early death amongst our community, but also in the world. We are damaging the environment, we are damaging the other species, we are damaging the water system, we're damaging the bees, we are damaging the seas, we're damaging everything. But yet, when you look at the basis of the reasons behind that damage that we are causing in the probably most commonly known labeled as climate change at its very, very basic level is food illiteracy. That people do not recognize the impact of consuming bad food. So bad food is being produced over and over and over again, and in larger and larger quantities. And that production of those large quantities of toxic food, or what I call fiat food, which is, because that's not food. What they're not producing is not food. That's fiat food. And I use the name fiat from as a term that I borrow from the economics. When you say fiat, is mostly used in terms of money. And fiat money is money that's not backed by anything. In America, not too long ago, before 1971, August 15, 1971, the American dollar was backed by gold. But since then, when Nixon made the announcement that he's suspending temporarily in that time, the backing of American dollar with gold, then we moved to what is called fiat currency, whereby money is only money by decree. Money is not money because it has any value. You can redeem that dollar for anything if it shoots to zero. That's why you can have inflation. But if the money is backed by gold, then you could take your dollar or any currency, you can take it to the treasury, and they can give you the silver or gold that actually back that dollar. So that was, so let me just pause that there and say, I borrowed that term fiat to say the food that we are consuming is fiat. It's food that doesn't have any health value to us. In fact, is actually detrimental to our health. So we have a lot of things that are being sold as food there, but are not food. There are a lot of things that we consume as food, but they are not food. And as a result, we have a very, very fast ballooning healthcare bill that we cannot sustain. That is definitely going to lead us to a big bust, to a big decline, to a major decline. This whole thing, the whole game of cards will come crumbling down. So anyway, so that's my ideas about food. And that's what so that's what I addressed. That's what we discussed. But not only to let people know that there's a problem, but to find a solution. That's why I came up with a cuisine called Afrofuturistic Conscious Cuisine to help address that problem. But as I say, I always try to understand every problem as an indigenous person, as a person of African descent, as a Kenyan, as a Black man in the US. And that's the purview that I speak from. That's the foundation I'm speaking from. But this is not just cuisine for Black people. This is a solution that's global. That's why I've been invited to different places to go and speak on this and share these ideas, including Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and all other places. So that's what the class is about. And the only other two small things I can add as I wrap up is that some people join. Well, so while the main focus is food literacy and make sure we eat, we move from death worship to life worship, and also recognize that health is something that we cannot afford not to have in our portfolio. Everybody has their portfolio for investment, for we have preferences for different brands. We have maybe cities we want to live, or brands that we like, and places we like to go for vacation, all that stuff. We have to have health as a central part of our portfolio. We cannot survive away from without having that for sure, for sure. That's something we gotta have. So that's one thing I like to add. And the final thing, so while that is the main focus, there is also a side benefit that comes out of it. And for some people, that's a focus, but for me, that's always a secondary benefit. And that is weight loss. The people has, yes. So yes, yeah. It is profound. It is profound. So if you understand that weight loss can only happen first after food literacy, but you can chase weight loss and ever win. It's a losing game. Majority of the people are having problems with their weight because of food illiteracy, either on their part, on the part of their family, going back to however. If you understand that, you think there's something even more profound, then now this is even more profound. That when you're eating, you're not only eating for yourself, you're eating for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 generations down the line. I've given one example, and that's where I wrap up. In the class, we talk about the most commonly used herbicide. Let me keep an eye on time because I want to respect everybody's time. Yes, I got 2 minutes. The most commonly used herbicide is atrazine. And atrazine has been proven through research, published research, to cause male frogs to produce eggs. So it effeminizes the male frogs to become females. The even worse part of it is that the atrazine that was exposed to the male frog doesn't end with that male frog, but affects 3 generations, not the children, but also the grandchildren of that frog. In the same way, I give numerous examples that I've seen, whereby the way in which one generation consumes food affects the health of the other generations far removed from that generation. So if you start thinking about food along those lines, you recognize that food is not as simple as just getting some coconut and eating. You're responding to a lot of genetic materials that's already in you. That's one. But you're also imprinting that particular habit in your genes, because some of the food that we're eating, just like the chemical atrazine, is epigenetics. It changes the genes that you have. So when you have children, if you have children, the genes that you're going to pass with your children will already be defected because of the food you consume. So food becomes extremely, extremely political. So if somebody is trying to give you anything that's not food, they are playing the biggest political game on you. You can vote all you want. That doesn't matter. You can vote your genes, the infection out of your genes. You can't vote that out. You cannot. You can buy good genes, at least not of yet, if you have bad genes. The cost of correcting bad health in your children, your grandchildren, and so on, I don't know how much that would cost, because you don't have control over the cost of healthcare. You don't. That's something you don't have. So even if I have a decent amount of money now, the easiest way I've seen for future generations, for that money to become worthless, is to get sick. Actually, the American Anthropological Association did an article on me back in 2017, I think 2018. And I think they featured me in their magazine. I'm not I don't pay my dues. I'm not a member of the American Anthropological Association, but they put me in their magazine because they recognize that was very, very fast thinking for me to have been talking about these things for as many years as I've been. Because I asked them, why are you putting me, profiling me on your magazine, professional magazine, and I'm not a due-paying member of the association. I was part of it when I was in grad school because my scholarship paid for it. But once I became an activist and I got out, that's something that was not important to me. But anyway, so I'm saying all that to just add weight to the fact that if you have children, you have to make sure, if you're selling any kind of education, you are intending to educate your children or anything, the very basic of any education is food literacy. Nobody was going to get out of life or win this game if they are not food literate. If they don't know how political food is, they cannot win the food game. I've seen so many people who have done well, but because of health issues, and they can enjoy life to the fullness, number one, but they can also perform the fullness of their gifts that they brought to this world because of their health. Okay, so that's it. That's all I wanted to share today. If you have any question, feel free to jump in. And the class, I didn't say we meet 3 times a week. Monday and Wednesday is cooking. And on Tuesdays, we have theories. So you first start, take 4 classes, I have 4 minutes. I don't need even by one. All I have is, all you have to do, so anyway, so take 4 classes, which is the foundational classes that looks at the basic stuff, all the other like theoretical stuff that I talk about. And then we start cooking more practically. And then on Tuesdays, we have theories where I share different stuff about tools, the things that you need to have in your kitchen, or small nuanced stuff that we might need. So anybody who got a question, you have 2 minutes to ask a question. Then as we head to our close, the class ends up 9:30. We stop recording, but we still have a few minutes. Class ends at 9:30, so we still have a few minutes to talk, but we'll end recording at that time. So that's it, man. That's all. I was trying to rush to squeeze in all the short stuff that a few stuff I wanted to share as fast as I can. So please excuse my speed. Sometimes I tend to speak very, very fast because I have all this information that I want to share, and given the little time that we have. But yes, if anybody got a question, feel free to ask a question. If not, I think yes. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Don. And yes, if you want to introduce yourself, who you were, you're welcome to do that. But this is everybody else's time except mine. Time for me to take a seat.
Let's see. Did Kim, did you get your question in?
No, I didn't, but good morning. Thank you, Chef Kabui, as always. I guess my question is, so, I have 3 kids and they're very active in the community, and we do, a lot of volunteering and talking about food literacy. And I guess I want to be sure. So sometimes there's an event that a lot of people participate in, and nothing against the company. I'm sure it's a great effort, but the Rise Against Hunger. So the packaged food, when you talk about food literacy,
yes,
is that I guess the idea or concept is positive. It's a great thing. But in actuality, what we're packing, is that healthy? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to be political, but food is political. So
yeah. You can get more political than food. Yeah. I'm glad. I'm happy to answer that. I'm very happy to answer that. So that's a problem. That's a question that all of us have to. That's a decision all of us have to. One point or another engage in possibly, right? Because now once you know better, you do better. At least that's my always goal. Doesn't mean I always do it. That's a different story. But you know better, you do better. The packaged food industry is a very integral part of the whole system that is very, very corrupt. You cannot exist if you didn't have packaged food. Packaged food is part of their strategy. It's like you have this cartel, So I know the field in which you work with. And we have, for example, let me use somebody else independent. So somebody is a nurse, somebody is a doctor. And we are